Oh, all right. Hi, guys. I am from VOIS Cyprus, which stands for Voices of International Students in Cyprus. First and foremost, we are really very honored to be invited for this come together among different human rights organizations. I think that the bottom line at the end of the day is that we all stand for the respect and dignity of human life. And basically, I think the other organizations are focusing on several issues, and VOIS is basically a platform which was created. I'm one of the co-founders. We have two other co-founders here, Mr. Yinka Oladapo and Ms. Fiona Kavakuri. We are basically a non-governmental organization which represents international students in Northern Cyprus across all the universities. Haven't been here 4 years and the others 4 and 5 years as well. We realized that international students face a number of problems, and so we thought that international students deserve a voice, a platform where or through which they can talk about these difficulties, but not only talking about them or creating awareness about these issues, but actually having dialogue with the local communities and other stakeholders to look for ways that we can look for solutions to some of these problems. While we are not only focused on racism, I think that for today we are going to talk about racism, some of the instances where international students have suffered from some kind of racial discrimination, but the organization is not only limited to racism. And coincidentally, when Ms. Faike and Mr. Dohuan invited us for this dinner, it coincided with a campaign which we've been working on racism, which started last week. So I would just want to go over a couple of issues before we delve into racism. I mean, just very briefly, what racism is, or how we do understand racism. Basically, when we talk of racism, I mean, there's really no specific definition for racism per se, but we look at prejudice, for example, discrimination, hatred towards a person or persons from a certain, who have a certain color, ethnicity, or origin. I mean, that's how, these are some of the key points when we are talking about racism. Of course, defining racism is very complicated, and even today it becomes more and more complicated because there are many other variables which are involved. And when looking at what or how we see racism, basically, it's not only harassment or abuse, neither is it only about violence or intimidation, but it is manifested in several ways. Sometimes it could just be exclusion. Sometimes racism is not even seen. For example, I could, let's say, apply for a job somewhere, and the employer decides not to look at my application because maybe from where I come from or the color of my skin. This, I mean, we don't really see it in everyday life, but these are all aspects of racism. So other ways it can be manifested is through beliefs, actions, attitudes, sometimes within institutions. And I think that within institutions it's really very glaring, especially here in the northern part of Cyprus. We're talking about the judiciary, the schools, which most international students come through. We're talking about the police also, for example. So these are some of these institutions which one way, directly or indirectly, reinforce racism or racist tendencies or other forms of prejudices or discrimination. And you know, we've been doing this, we did a survey 2 weeks back, basically on the problems international students face. And if you see, we had 173 respondents, and you see racism, out of 173 respondents, 71, that is 41%, said they have suffered from one form of racism. And you know, as VOIS, we tell ourselves that, okay, these are just statistics, but we tell ourselves, for example, that one person who suffers from racism is one person too much. So when we say 41%, that is 41% too much. And I think that racism is really something which we need to tackle, because racism has a lot of effect on the person. For example, I'll give a personal example. Once I got into this shop. I'm from Cameroon, by the way, so we do drink a lot of alcohol. So I was going to visit a couple of friends, and now we went visiting our friends, we buy alcohol, and I get into the shop. This was in Famagusta, and I think he'd had a bad experience with an African couple that had just left his shop. So he told me, I don't sell to black people, my friend. And I was taken aback. You know, I was really very shocked that this was coming. And by then I had made 2 years here, and I thought my experience was really bad. But then there are other experiences that have been worse. We have this lady who shared her experience with us when we had the panel back in EMU. I think that was November of 2017, and she basically said she was walking the streets, and you had this family that was Nika. You had a husband, the wife, and 2 kids. They stopped, wind down the glasses, and said, "Hey, monkey, go back to Africa." I mean, these things happen. They sound as though they are shocking, but they do happen. We have restaurant owners, for example, who employ foreigners, sometimes dark-skinned. And by the way, it's not only towards Africans as well. You have Pakistanis, you have Indians, you have many other people who suffer this kind of racism. And basically, once we asked one of the students who was working in the restaurant how she thinks there is this classification, and she said, for example, when they went looking for a job, you had Africans, you had Turkish, not Turkish Cypriots, but Turks themselves, you had some Asians, Pakistanis, and she said the manager came, for example, and said, who are those who want to work? Some persons put their hands up, and then he first took the Turkish nationals and gave them a job. Then he came later on, came and got some Eastern Europeans, then some Arabs, then the dark-skinned dark-skinned Africans, because sometimes we try to differentiate between African Arabs and dark-skinned Arabs. And this is just another incident. Once we asked a restaurant owner, for example, why he prefers having dark-skinned Africans to work in the kitchens and not serve outside. And he said some of his customers feel uncomfortable when they see someone of a dark skin serving them food. I mean, these things sound they sound strange, but they really do happen here, and they happen with such it's really that often that it's no longer a coincidence. It's something which is societal. It's something which really needs to be dealt with systematically. And that's one of the aims of VOIS. It's not only to castigate people who discriminate or have these prejudices or show some form of hatred, but it's more of having a dialogue with them, understanding why they feel this way, and breaking some of these stereotypes, because sometimes, in some cases, some people are outrightly racist and really blatant about it. In some other cases, you have persons who have grown up that way. Okay, it really doesn't make it right, but when you talk with these persons and you help them understand the other side, or how these other persons feel when they are treated or called this way, they tend to understand and they change. So it's not only about name calling or name shaming and all those things. And a really shocking experience once, I played football, so I was in one of the pitches, and these guys were speaking in French. I understand French, but they didn't know I understood French. So they were speaking in French, and there was this dark-skinned girl person, and the other guy was like, "Do you want to ask her out or something?" And he said, "No, I don't ask out black girls." And his friend was like, "But why don't you?" He said, "I just feel they are dirty." I was really shocked. But that's how some people think. And it's really not something which I think society has to tolerate. I think it's something which society really needs to stamp out. And this is one of the reasons why we came up with this campaign as VOIS Cyprus on racism. And I will show you this. I don't know if it's very visible, but this happened, I think, a week and a half ago. Or 2 weeks ago. This Kibris in Clery. I don't know if you guys know the site. This is what they put online. This happened after Halloween. This was a video, and the video they were showing how dirty the streets were the day following Halloween. And if you see, of course, the translation in English doesn't really do it justice. But basically, they were, at the end, they said, because we were showing the streets that were very dirty, and they said, "We are European, but look African." And when I saw it, I was quite shocked, because there were so many likes, people were commenting and all this, but nobody really saw that this was something which was very bad, some kind of prejudice, some kind of a stereotype that we just think that Africa is dirty. And when I put a comment, it took them 2 days to take down this post. 2 days to take down this post. And let's forget about the fact that this was taken down, but the very fact that a blog like this, which has thousands of followers could put this up, and many people, I'm talking of like, I was probably the first person who put up a comment criticizing them for this. Nobody saw it as though it was a problem. It says a lot about the society. It says a lot about what priorities are. Priorities about cleanliness and dirt, but not really about how people feel or how this is offensive towards an entire continent of 1.2 billion people, and you just generalize that they are all dirty or something. Well, luckily they put this, the post was taken down, I think 2 days after, but it really still doesn't change the fact that that happened. So I think these are some instances where we really need to have some kind of a dialogue on these issues to change these mentalities and how people think about these things. So these are some of the part of our campaign. Because for our campaign we design posters and we put them up and actually ask people to comment on them using the hashtag No to Racism hashtag, and we also use VOIS hashtag. So this is one of our campaigns which we are doing online. You see, for example, black is, you see the search console, and sometimes these are some of the stereotypes. You know, black is slower, black is refugee, black is stupid, black is poor, black is ugly, black is monkey. And there was this newspaper here, I think called Africa, for example, which had a monkey there, and I was quite surprised that people saw this as something which was okay. You know, a newspaper called Africa, and then you have a monkey there. I mean, it's really very offensive. And what racism does to an individual is that it kills you. You know, it kills you slowly, because it makes you feel that you are subhuman. It makes you feel that you are not worthy of sharing the same space with other people. It kills your self-confidence, not only in class, in your classes, but in your job, in anything you do. You start to doubt yourself. And we might think that these are just numbers, but these are lives. These are people who have families, whose families depend on them. So, I mean, destroying that one life sometimes is destroying an entire community, an entire family. And I think it's really something that as a society, and we really have so many debates these days, and it's really very complex, these things. But I think that the fact that they are complex really should not stop us from talking about these things. Rather, it means that we need to put more effort into understanding each other, into understanding the sensitivities of different people. It shouldn't only be about racism. I mean, there are several other topics, but what we're saying is we have to say no to these prejudices. We have to say no to discrimination. We have to say no to all forms of hatred. And this is one of the other campaigns as well, where we say there is only one, the only race which we should support, and that's why we have the hashtag No to Racism campaign. If you go to our Facebook, our Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, using VOIS Cyprus, you'll see these campaigns, and we really want to encourage those of you who are here, or your friends, or those of you who are watching, to use the hashtag No to Racism campaign in posts you're putting up, so that we spread this message, we sensitize, and we create awareness about these issues. And this is the last of the designs which we are using for the same campaign. It's still about like racism. It starts with me. So I'll just like all of you to say racism. It starts with me.
Racism.
1, 2, 3, go. Racism. It starts with me. Thank you guys very much for listening. I hope I haven't taken that long. I have a habit for talking really long, so I'll just rather end here. And really thank you all guys for listening, and I'm hoping that would really spread the message, the sensitization and awareness on this No to Racism campaign. We have a couple of brochures and cards, and would be really willing to talk with the other organizations out here and see how we can work together to fight racism, trafficking, and other human rights abuses. Thank you very much.